Or for the body as cautionary tale. Sing at the feast, bowls of gravel and wire, sawdust bread, rice carved from the moon's deciduous teeth. Wash it down with remediated rivers, ablated glaciers, hot-blooded seas. Chase it with industrial slush, crude plumes, holy petroleum. Can you hear the bells, runaway exponentials, ticking cells? Dress for extreme weather, decked in feathers and tremors. Sun reddens at noon in forest fire conditions as molecules sink into the water table, as the field's yellow caution tape ribbons the wind. After the storm, my father's hammer craters the walls. Score for body in tidal surge. Test the waters, crimson with algae, oil and metal ore. We long for reasonable seasons, fires wilding, deluge on the loose, boulders rolling home. I batten hatches for the storm. You ride the surge, wearing the endangered body of a bird. Wending in breadlines we taste, germ of the grain, plague of the germ. Let the stunned tongue say, morning every morning, on autumn days bright with decay, spores pixelating the wind, ants marching on empires of weeds, mile-high tides, stars wheeling across the black circuit. Score for a body on the line. Guard the porch of my mouth, old spit factory. Curtain the bird of my tongue. Swaddle the moon, rename the sun. Pull milk from heavy fruits, from white dwarf stars, sheltering in space. Glitter harbingers, degenerate remnant planets, invisible in our cities. Glistening targets, fragile mammals, account for your apertures, moist portals open to overtures, eyes issuing rivers. Most desirable host, sheltering in place, shake that long face, shake it, like a petroleum gull. Request a fresh suit for human rain, chemical plumes, toxic motes. Oh, don't call me wrecked nest. Score for the body as demolition site. Mind your tongue. Keep an eye on the eye, hiding between notes. We play a game with no score, down on all fours. Call all ill animals to the yard. Sweeten the debris you feed them. Jump the electric fence, the species link. Suit up for demolition. Dig doorways into the earth. Break windows into the frozen lake. Build tinder cathedrals as sparks ride upward. We bend the night around our shoulders, wear its heavy costume to bed. Wake to red tidal blooms, havoc in the cells. Lend your decibels to the applause, your muscle for the charge, your red ochre on the walls, your scanned fingerprints. Score for the body with bioaccumulation. Save us from cold moons, lakes of liquid methane, sunless planets, balls with no spin, no high noon, no big crimson behind clouds, seated with benzene. Give us our sun, hot queen, radiation maven, sporting a burning corona. My father lived in the desert between a gypsum mine and Superstition Mountain. He storied the last wild condors, 6-foot wings, their blood spiked with DDT. I know the taste, famous poison lacing a generation of mother's milk. When he lost his way under the punishing sun, he sucked white sap from cacti, pulling spines from his tongue. Score for compromised body. Ride the river to the polyethylene sea. Trouble back upstream, tastes of Teflon and jet fuel. Forever chemicals in our blood. Children, forgive us the heavy metals in your every tooth and bone. God bless America's contamination zones. Children, drink your polyfluoral alkyl milk as oceans cloud over with chalky algae, killing krill and fish by the legion. Cousin Leviathan, swallow me into your rank church, humid cavern of flotsam and jetsam. Teach me your wild scores, blue fugues drowned by engine din, propeller roar, and offshore oil rigs. Score for the body in geologic time. Report weather from the interior, extreme heat index, thunder in the middle distance, contaminated rain and wind. We go further in, stretching time like an accordion, as coral filters an ocean, as kelp sways in the punctual moonlight. Shed the exoskeleton of sleep, as the clock glints its teeth, as 4 walls grow a membrane around the nuptial bed. Sirens begin again, as my hands find the gills of your ribs. Wake us, first vertebrates, floating in shallow seas. Let our fins find dry land. Score for bodies in the middle distance. Take your time to become mammal, first membrane to last synapse, top predator to big game in a trophic cascade. Weather the spiked crown in hot spots in epic centers. If we survive the season, find me in a yellow field or a modern canyon. Rub the velvet from my antlers. What does the soul call the tongue? Red bridge, pet horse, wet instrument. Sing to me from a distance, like a possessed bell without a clapper. Let us salute as sunflowers salute across the crowded room of a dream. We shed our black confetti. We touch as seeds touch inside the body of a bird. Hold your animal mind with mine, mountain to mountain. Score for the body as fire season. Call me tender envelope, little tinder, rational animal, running for the shore. Wildfires make their own weather, dry thunder, soot snow. We shelter in a crowded burrow under an orange noon sky. Airlift us with Icarus wings. Calculate the weight of drought dust, star agrit. Measure loss as freight. Late now to perform prescribed burn or tamp down the embers. Wiring fires, ash the place. Cue the exit music. We must flee from home. Going, going, long gone with the wind-blown toxins. Saplings, black to the root. Score for the body as calving glacier. Hold your jagged tongues, their blue sluice. I drink from your leaks, polar lobes, ablation zones. I touch your Arctic bulk, friable ice scored with cracks. I beg on my knees, halt your calving, rewind your ruptures, recall debris from risen acidic seas, oceans swallowing coasts. Resist the sultry air as your meltwater roves south, shifting the planetary axis, disrupting the Gulf Stream. In the deep water column, your carbon dioxide steals ions, corrodes the calcium armor of sea snails and intricate starfish bones. Oh, broken chain, begin again. For a somnambulant body. Begin in rivers, green with leached nitrogen. Begin in dirt underfoot. Listen to the insect chorus, microbe empire. My father sleeps in the loam, in the low clay. I'm accountable only to the wind and rocks shedding their skins in acid-laced rain. I lie under a blue tarp ceiling, dreaming a modern ark with a hole in its hull. All morning gone, swimming in the marrow. All afternoon spent in the wet archive behind the eyes. After the flood, salt kills the pines. Out in another scorched forest, animal bones are slow, skull a bowl, our dust on loan from a shapely nebula. Score for sovereign body. I'm not your biddable animal, hand-fed beast, leashed creature. Queens made beyond human control, high and wild, 60 feet overhead, coupling in the upper air with random drones, half a score or more. Queens will be killed at the mouth of the wrong hive, danger at the door. We all fall to humans or bears, murderous hornets, toxic uptake in a flower. We all fall to viral spikes, foul brood surging in crowded colonies. Deploy biological weaponry, sealing the propolis envelope around the cone. Leave only a tiny crack, impervious to volcanic ash. As we gorge on our store, gold cash. Score for the body in a land of milk and honey. Steer your makeshift raft, follow Polaris over 6 troubled rivers, 7 dead seas, to bring me the last casks of honey from a promiscuous wilderness. All day we petition for rain, waiting out wildfires. All night we spill the milk of human time, cupping hands to drink compromised waters, fastening storms to boarded shores, capsizing our bodies, flesh boats, mobile homes. Rend my envelope, pluck my red hot root, our blood flooded with legacy chemicals. Why stake your dime on us fools, top mammals, toxic sovereigns, scorched horses, our mighty synapses, our fast hands? We pass like nectar between the tongues of bees. Score for the body in fever. No beds for the sick. Check historical precedents. Boccaccio called the bubonic a kind of fire in the house of the body, in the bellowing lungs, in the warm cave of your mouth on mine. Requiem time for animal appetites. Stop weeping, little pangolin, distant cousin of the armadillo. Come kiss me in the sterile vestibule of a dream. Come check my PPE, my donning and doffing rituals. In rolling hills, pocked with caves, we bed for the night. I feel your heavy breath in mine, roving damp hands. I feel a cleaving in my cells. I can't catch all this wet confetti, this spillover, over and over. Score for the body as terrestrial experiment. Pledge allegiance to a dozen senses. Milk the lion to feed the lamb. Dress the body in resin and feathers, formaldehyde and dandelion. We are a nest for the breath, sending wet motes into the wind. Measure viral load. Build a house of dirt. Use a knife to score clay slabs. Add slag. Fire to adhere. Call the body ghost meat, breached sheath, spectral suit, worn by my father his last day on earth. No solution to our porous equation, subject to chemical accumulation. Unhinge the jaws, swallow the impossible air. Score for clandestine bodies. Meet me behind the mountain. Press me against a mineral seam. I can't sing. Swallowed my tongue when I was a bird. Sick beak, greasy wings. When I see you, I nod like a bell. Smile like a cracked hull. Come closer. Your voice will live in the nautilus of my ear to the wall. Your pearl in my throat. I'll be the river under your floor, burning with dioxin and time. Night is a hive we report back to, depositing toxic dew. On the bed's proscenium, we play the parts we were born for. paragon of animals, honey receptacles. Score for the body between seed and thorn. A flower is a series of events in time, and the origin of the apple, the orange, the lemon, dimpled skin, shining with fungicide. Rain consorts with the trees. I need a machine made of sound, soft detonations, scores for the body to perform. I put my ear to the wall of your chest with a flesh drum. Cell by cell, you remake yourself. We are both bee and comb. Good world, surrender your nectar. Kick pollen into the wind. Deconstruct the bud, blowing it open. Between seed and thorn, satin and rot, we take what you've got. All the sweet debris, every last bird. Score for rewilding body. Invite the lichen to colonize the rocks. Dress up the deserts. Tamp down the dust storms. Summon the moss to hold the soil. Microbe circus underfoot. Enlist fungi to sop up oil spilled in the brownfield lot. Big bad wolves, make your comeback. Rewind trophic cascades. Revive the wild, culling elk. Save shrubs for mice and bison devoured by owls and mountain lions. Spare willow for beavers in winter governing rivers. Recruit otters, their pelts once called soft gold. Score for bodies dressed in pollen. Dress in pollen, dance in code. Stay loyal to one or two flowers. Follow the pigment, my red specialist, my blue connoisseur. Build your hive in an abandoned tire, rolling down the road. Here comes my father around the bend of a dream, wearing a crown of bees, sawdust on his shoes. In winter, we filled our pockets with black seeds, waited in a grove, hands outstretched for chickadees, dark caps matching the hulls in their beaks. Sunflowers are said to pull radiation from the soil. In the fields near Fukushima, shaggy coronas, beaded faces. Around Chernobyl, gold sentinels. Score for the body as time machine. Rewind the sun, set back the burning clock, sweep debris into a moon, score a cluster of stars, reenact plate tectonics, great oxygenations, swim, trilobite swim, as flowers precede the bees, as whales flunk back into the oceans, mountains trending up, seas retreat, glaciers advance. We invent the kiss, record an inch of history, grease wheels, melt poles. Volcanoes wear down to nubs, buildings to braille. Nuclear waste takes the time it takes, along with choral revival and continental rifts. To camp with the moon in galactic drift. Dial down the sun, red giant, white dwarf, runaway star.
You want the right direction? First, we get another hand, that phenomenal water. Beautiful films, a beautiful reading. I guess to start, could you talk a little bit about the origins of the title?
Sure. First of all, thanks everybody for coming. Thank you, writers and books, for having me. Thank you, Al, for joining the conversation. The origins of the project. I've long been interested in environmental writing, but this project did have kind of a light bulb moment, a kind of a speed moment I can point to. It was about 2012. I was living in New York, and it was just after Hurricane Sandy. And a friend of mine who lives in the famous Westbeth buildings, everybody know Westbeth Arts Building. It's like artist housing, and it used to be Merce Cunningham Studios. Now it's Martha Graham Studios. Anyway, she said they came in hazmat suits. She just, she like said it out. And it just busted into my mind, that image. They came in hazmat suits to deal with the flooding in the building. So it was just a moment where I was like, okay, we're talking about climate change and increasing intensity of weather events and increasing storms, but here we are. This is it. It's, it's not just far off. It was in 2012. That was a while ago now. That wasn't something that we were so used to being part of our everyday reality. And so I thought, okay, this is part of my life, and how am I going to respond to this in my work? But I just filed it away because I was working on my first book. And then in 2015, my father passed away from a very aggressive form of cancer from his occupational asbestos exposure. And so in addition to thinking about climate change and reading about climate change, I started thinking about hazardous exposures and in relationship to environmental threats. And so I started to work on that in my first book, but I started to file that away in my mind and also to research it and follow it. And just doing a lot of reading in that time and research, and then it kind of came together when the pandemic hit, and I had time to pull it all together and start working on it. And of course, during the pandemic, we're reading a lot of journalistic work about habitat destruction being an issue, and trafficking of illegal trafficking of wild animals. And so that it sort of kind of all started to come together and coalesce at that moment. I also had time on my hands to work on it. So,
Cool. So then could you talk a little bit about the relationship between the film and
okay. All right, so buckle up because I'll probably talk for a while about and about a 6-year process. So I had that image of the hazmat suit burned in my mind for my friend's words in New York, and I got my hands on some of these suits, and well, I guess I'm starting to map it out chronologically because that's how I have to think about it. And I'll get to the interplay a little bit, like as I talk about the chronology a bit. But I have a background as in experimental dance and theater, and my dear friend was coming over from Australia to New York, who I used to dance with, and I thought, okay, this is my opportunity. My friend will do this project with me. I got the costumes. We went out to film on the coast in New York, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I thought, okay, I think this is going to be some kind of interdisciplinary multimedia project. I think I'm going to write poems towards this video work, but I didn't really even know. And so just to back up a little bit, in the past, I collaborated with my husband, who's a filmmaker, and we had always started with the poems. That's usually how you think of video poems. Start with a poem and then do some sort of video in response to it. But I felt like our work was always kind of illustrated. So I thought, okay, how can I upend that? I'm going to start with a video. I'll start with a video and write towards it. Because I had never heard of, I'm always trying to find ways to innovate and to give myself new challenges in my work. I thought, okay, I've never heard of a writer, a poet writing towards video imagery. So that was my way of activating this project, and it changed over time. Like we did the first film, which was when the pandemic hit. Okay, so we did a lot of filming from 2017 to 2020, many locations: Tupelo Lake, Highland Park, Joshua Tree, California, New York City, and we had all this footage. What are we going to do with this? What am I doing? Aren't I a poet? Like, why am I spending all this time shooting video? But I was like, I want to do an interdisciplinary project at some point. And the pandemic hit. We had a lot of time. I said, okay, you're in lockdown in Midtown Manhattan. Let's start editing these videos. And I had written a couple of poems, like I said, towards this material. And I thought, okay, I've got these 2 poems. They're sort of like these working in fragments, and I will just try to keep writing them and see how many. And so I came up with 12 poems, or like 12 poems for 12 months of the year, and we edited down 12 short scores to go with them. And that was our first film, Score for Body, this cautionary tale. After that, I thought, okay, I've written 12. Let me try to write 20. Like I'm calling them scores. Let me write a score. So I wrote 20, and then pretty soon I wrote 2 scores. I had 40, and then I was like, okay, they're a bit sprawling. So let me whittle them down. And so I put them together in a shape of 30, and really was focused on the environmental aspect of the work. And that became, I sent that off to many places, but it eventually, thanks to Split Rock Press, became this. And then we started working on new material for a new film, which was an utter failure because because I was being too willful, and I had all these poems. I thought, okay, I've got all these poems, and I'm going to go do this shot, and I'm going to do this shoot, and I'm going to do. It was like too didactic. It wasn't open enough. Like in the beginning, it was like site specific improvisational performance, public performance, and then being filmed, and then working with these poems. It was like that was leading. So I realized, okay, I still have to have something more improvisatory and experimental about the process. So I kind of loosened up, and now we're working in a way where there's sort of an interesting interplay between letting the poems lead the process, like saying, okay, this poem, I think this location, let's say Chimney Bluffs, will work. I'm talking a lot about caves and canyons, and okay, it sort of has a cave canyon feel, but then we went to that location and shot things that were like a surprise element and then became part of other scores. So now it's just sort of this symphonic process where there's a lot of interplay between the videos and poems. So we're trying to do now a follow-up to our first film. So wish us luck. We start editing that soon. But I'm about to wrap this up. You still got your seatbelts on, right? So I'm about to wrap this up. So today was a third thing. So this was footage from the first film, poems obviously all from this chapbook, and footage from the new film that we're working on. And it just feels like a third incarnation of the project, like a third iteration, like a third interplay of videos and poems, because it's very hard to read with videos and stay in some sense of timing. Like it was a new discovery. Like we discovering it this week, like yesterday. I was distracted and I was rehearsing and the timing was wrong. And Andrea's like, "Do you want me to add a few seconds?" And I was like, no, I just have to stay focused. So I wanted to use this launch to celebrate this chapbook, but also to experiment and to invite you all into that process with me and to discover something new. Okay, we've made a third thing. We've made poems, we've made a chapbook, we've made films, and now we're bringing them together in a live situation. So thank you all for buckling up that long ride.
Well, I think that's really exciting too, to think of how you can keep the poems, the whole project alive, finding new ways of presenting the material, breathing new life into it with different kinds of performances, introducing footage into the project, which I think is really exciting. Now, you mentioned that you had some background in experimental dance, right? You have visual arts background. I'm interested in asking you about the different influences to the project, how those things inform the interdisciplinary nature of the project. I think one of the things I found really thrilling about the film is, it's poetry, it's film, it's performance art, it's like all these different things coming together. So I'm wondering how your various backgrounds and the other various influences
It was just really a desire in terms of the ignition of it. Like I wanted to be able to bring all my studies and modes of practice together into one place. Because with the first book, I felt like, okay, I just absolutely need to focus on writing this first book. So now with the second project, I thought, okay, I can open up a bit and bring those influences in. And it was something that I've been having encouragement towards that from various teachers who, before I thought, okay, I want to be a literary artist and a writer, and I'm going to leave all that behind. And then people said, I remember Tim Lu saying, "Oh no, it distinguishes you," or Tracy K. Smith was a teacher who was always or Brenda Shaughnessy was another teacher. They were always interested to talk to me about my experience in dance and theater and how that affected my writing. And so I thought, okay, let me welcome that in now. And I always have drawn, even with my first book, when I was just writing and not working in this interdisciplinary mode, I've always drawn inspiration from visual artists and film and dance, and that's always really informed my work. So here I just invited it in more actively, and there was various artists that and works that kind of guiding lights for me, and that's not really the great image or metaphor, but Ana Mendieta, does anybody know her work? She has done a lot. She did a lot of film and sculpture, earthworks they were called, like outdoor sculpture and performances in outdoor locations and films. And she was like a guiding light. And actually I was turned on to her work when I was in high school at School of the Arts. Elizabeth Lyons turned me on to her work. And so that's been a long time that I've been interested in her work. And who else? Eiko Otake is a Buto dancer and modern dance artist. And she did an incredible project and book called A Body in Fukushima. And she collaborated with photographer William Johnston, and that's an incredible project. I encourage people to look it up. she did all this incredible site-specific outdoor dance and performance, really witnessing the, horror, the, nuclear leak there, and looking kind of at the history of it in Japan as well. And who else? I'm also really inspired by, this might be like a shout out to some friends tuning in, to Milford Graves, who was an incredible free jazz musician at Bennington College, and he taught there for 40 years and influenced so many people, but he was also an interdisciplinary artist. And I want to wrap this up soon. He did this amazing performance I saw when I was a freshman, where it was, incredible music, free jazz, but he also had live martial arts / kind of dance. He was doing like live acupuncture with like bamboo needles. And at one point he started throwing apples into the audience. And it just blew my mind. I thought, this is incredible. You can do anything on stage. Like you don't have to just be a jazz musician or a professor. You can also be interested in healing and herbal healing, Chinese medicine, and martial arts, and make your own martial arts. And then you could like bring in the apples that are falling from the trees. And I've always had apples in my work. Performance, as you saw tonight. So I hope that answered the question.
I want to give some time for
2 minutes
2 minutes.
till Q&A.
Okay, all right, so I'm gonna ask one more question, before we turn it over to the audience, and sort of shift our focus towards the poems on page. And so, you mentioned sort of that process, that interplay between film and poetry, and how you settle on the score, but I mean, it's a very specific form. You really work your way through these prose poems, and I'm wondering how you settled on that form, for the collection.
Okay, well, I've always been interested in poems that are trying to do other things, like epistolary poems, letter poems, or poems posing sort of as self-portrait, as this, as that, poems drawing from the visual arts, poems cast as essays or lectures, or I've always found that exciting, just some of the thrill, like, oh, a poem can be anything. It doesn't have to just be a poem. And I thought, okay, I have this background in dance, and dancers, especially improvisational dancers, often work with scores. So it's a loose score. I mean, we also often think score is like music score, notated music notation, but dancers often use it just to describe sort of the parameters of an improvisation. And I thought, okay, well, why can't I do that for the page? Okay, so why can't I try to score something that's a poem, that's also perhaps could be a performance, or could be a film, or could cross over. And I was influenced by Yoko Ono's book Grapefruit, and her direction, her poems that are like directives, or pieces like scores for a performance, or scores for actions, and conceptual orientation for a poem. And I wanted to work with fragments, because when in my research of doing environmental research, I often find like just little nuggets of language that are interesting, because it's hard to read, let's say, the New York Times Climate Forward, or very devastating climate article, to pull vast swaths into a poem. It's like it's hard to make that transition to lift the language from one place to another. But I find if I draw on like little bits, little fragments of language that then I can string together. So that was also key to the form. To kind of, I sort of think of them sometimes like fractured sonnets, in terms of like it's in series. And I was influenced by your first book, and how your wonderful poems in series, like so series poems, or also I love Noah Falk's The Exclusions, like a project book where all the poems have kind of conceptual threading between them. And when the pandemic hit, I really needed a project to hold me and give me something to focus on, and and also to move from my first book, where it was like written over 10 years. I wrote 6 different types of poems in that first book. But okay, I want to try something focused and sustained, and all of that led me to finding this form and this project.
I'm gonna turn it over to the audience. Does anybody have any questions for Willa?
Hi, I'm over here. I was interested in your choice of the you that repeats throughout, and also the imperative. I felt as though the direct address was more imperative than a conversation. And I wonder if you can talk about that a bit. Sometimes I heard the you as the phenomenon or the object, and outside, sometimes even as the dead father, and sometimes as the narrator herself themselves. So I wonder if you can talk about that decision and the very kind of interesting use of you, where that went for you, and am I hearing that in a way that's so multiple that it's not what you intended?
No,
It feels
absolutely.
multiple for me.
Absolutely, and I love the way you're talking about it. I think you're talking about it even better than I did, because it was, I think, intuitive. I think what I wanted mostly, and I think the best way to talk about it for me is that sort of a desire and intention in the composition of the poems was really to break out of just like one lyric eye, or you know, I also wanted to have a sense of like the collective. So there is the you does shift. It's right. Sometimes it's the father, sometimes it's the reader, but not just a reader. It's like I wanted to sense like, okay, and also like during wrote it mostly in the pandemic, and we were all having this collective experience. It was very similar of being apart from each other. So I think it was also out of loneliness and desire to connect. And but it's interesting you point out the you. I'm glad that you did that, because I think a bit more. I was also focused. Well, I did really focus at a certain point on pronouns. I think there was one point in the process where I just focused on that, and I think I've kind of forgotten about that moment. There's all those things when you're writing something that you do and then you forget, and it just becomes part of the whole in the end. But I wanted the address to shift, because sometimes it's an intimate you as well, like there's like, so, and I was hoping, okay, I hope the readers can come along with me as this keeps shifting and transforming, and then the eye is also shifting, and it's not always, you know, sometimes the poems are in the voice of an animal or the elements, or and sometimes the address also is really wide, like kind of a Vedic, you know, like addressing the elements, or you know, someone else said, oh, it has like a biblical feel to it, which wasn't my intention, but I think that I've always been excited when poems have kind of like an out of time feel. Yet also an intimacy. So I was trying to kind of come from all these different sort of orientations.
Yeah, I felt like it worked because it wasn't impersonal at all. At the same time, I think it was, you know, very large in scope, but I also felt like it lent this urgency and that this momentum that was cumulative, this kind of instruction after instruction after instruction, even when it sort of backtracked and questioned. So I don't know, I just love the choice. It was very interesting for me to think about.
Thank you. I feel like you're actually mirroring what my intention was, you know, 4 years ago, and now I'm remembering, oh yes, I do want that. I think so many things change. You start doing, you know, rehearsing timing, and you know, doing the later elements of releasing a book. So I really thank you for that question. Thanks.
It was so long.
Ask that. That was some kids in Central Park, and it was the only time we shot in New York City, like not on the edge, you know, on the coast, and it was a snowstorm, and we went out, and some kids came by, and they were like, "So, what are you doing?" You know, they were very interactive, like and they wanted to tell me what they thought of the project. Like, so this is about COVID. And I was like, it's actually also about the destruction of the environment, which you might want to be interested in since you're a young person. And they were great, you know, New York City, like, you know, young, smart kids. And they were about to walk away, and I just thought, let me give them something. I want something. I said, hey, kids. And actually I had my husband kind of yell at them and said, hey, will you throw a snowball? And they actually had to throw a few for it to connect. And afterwards they said, Thank you for that. Thank you, and thank you for the question.
I noticed a lot of references to astronomy within the poems. How did thinking about space and other planets relate to the destruction of art that I think you're thinking about?
That's a really good question. Well, I think maybe in terms of like origin and destination, right? So we're all stardust, right? And the planet, is part of that larger cosmos. And then I guess if it's all destroyed, we'll just hop in, right? Elon Musk's, right? And go up to some other planet, even though, moon dust and, Mars soil dust would like kill us if it got into our spacesuits. I guess I just wanted, to have like a widening of the lens in certain moments. And I've always been interested in reading about the origins of the planet, and also sometimes comforting myself with thinking like, okay, well, what will be in the future beyond all of this? So I think it was like I am interested in scale and perspective. And I think that we really need to widen our scale and perspective, and that not just like, because I don't know, I was raised in the Star Wars era, Gen X over here, but because I think that if we widen our scope and enlarge our perspective, then we'll be better human beings to each other and to our planet. So.
Can you talk about the presence of the father in the collection and the significance to the subject matter?
Thank you. That's a good question. Yeah, at one point I'd actually taken him out when I was about to send this out. Thought, okay, this is just about the environment. And then I took him out and I thought, no, he has to come back in, because it's an important element for me. I think after his death, I wrote a lot about his death and asbestos exposure in the first book. And then with this one, I wanted to connect like this personal loss and his experience to more collective forces and experiences that we all share in terms of, toxic exposures that we, have in our drinking water or in the air. So it's a relationship of like this personal loss that I'm trying to enlarge and connect to what we're all facing. And I think I wanted to do that so it just wouldn't be so painful for me to only have this like personal loss. I thought, okay, can I enlarge this and connect it to these larger forces that are in play, and that more people are facing. So it's not just personal. For me, trying to take the personal to the collective, but it also grounds it. And also, my dad was very interested in the natural world, and he taught me to appreciate it. I mean, my mom absolutely too. And so I think there's a tribute aspect to it as well. And then also it's, sometimes these issues, environmental issues, it's so large, and just the human element can feel like it can get lost. So I thought, okay, that's a grounding thing for me to come back to. That relationship with the father. So it kind of keeps it at human scale and, of the heart, tethered to the heart, even though it's looking at these wider issues.
Time for one more question.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about your background as an artist in dance and in theater, and how it influenced your creative process. And I was just curious how you got on this track of being a poet and a writer and an interdisciplinary artist, and how you decided that was something that was going to be an important part of your life in connecting the personal to the collective that you're talking about.
Thank you. That's a wonderful question, and it brings us back here to Rochester, because I think that was activated at the School of the Arts, and it was such a wonderful time where I could study so many things. I was a visual arts major at School of the Arts, but also studied dance and also studied creative writing, and but at a level that was, sometimes I feel self-conscious about talking about like going back to high school. Oh, it was in high school. It seems like, oh, that's your juvenilia phase. That's not, you know, that doesn't count in terms of wanting to be, you know, an artist with any sense of, you know, ambition. But I really felt like that was where it was seated for me. It was here in Rochester, and also the arts community has always been so strong here. My mother's an artist, and I grew up in the arts community here, and going to art openings when I was a little kid. So it's just been part of my life from the beginning, and then going to Bennington for undergrad and studying dance and literature and poetry and doing visual arts there as well, and then living in New York for 25 years. And there was maybe a couple moments in my life where I thought, okay, maybe could I possibly leave the arts and do something else? But absolutely no. It's like sometimes I tell myself, you're doing what you're trained to do, which sounds sort of dry, but I have such a long arts education in so many forms, and so I feel like I'm just doing what I'm trained to do. Bring it all together. That sounds dry, but sometimes I think, you know, as artists, we need to ground ourselves in just, you know, in the work of it. And so bring it all back to here, and just to Rochester, and my sense of gratitude for growing up here in this really rich community, and I'm also really happy to be back. So,
Thank you, everybody.
So thank you to Willa for the wonderful reading, and Al for the very excellent conversation, and to all of you for coming and listening and for supporting us. The reason we're able to have performances and readings like this is because of generous donors, subscribers, members like all of you. So if you want to purchase a membership or renew, you can do that downstairs or online. And we'll have the book downstairs as well. So thank you both again, and thank you all.